There are 3 ways to shift gears on a motorcycle. We'll start with the basic method, and by the end of this video you'll also know 2 more advanced techniques that will make your shifting faster, smoother and make you feel like a pro. We'll go through 3 different shifting methods, for both upshifts and downshifts, and break down the pros and cons of each. First, we'll cover the basic shifting style taught during beginner courses. Then, we'll look at clutchless shifting, which skips the clutch entirely and lets you change gears faster. And finally, we'll see the third, hybrid method, that combines the first 2 into one super quick, buzzer-smooth technique you can use for both upshifting and downshifting. These are among other advanced riding techniques we teach on this channel, so remember to subscribe! And also check out our King of the Road course, where we go far beyond the basics and work on riding techniques that make you a safer and more confident rider. Let's start with the most basic shifting style, the one being taught in beginner motorcycle courses. Though it is pretty simple and straightforward, there are still a couple of common mistakes new riders tend to make, so it is worth recalling how it is done. Here's how it goes. When we are accelerating and at some point need to upshift, we close the throttle, pull in the clutch, push the shifter up all the way, release it, let the clutch out and get back on the throttle. Easy enough. For downshifting, it is the opposite. Roll off the throttle, pull in the clutch, push the shifter down all the way, release it and then release the clutch. While downshifting, it is important to release the clutch slowly and carefully, so you don't get a sudden harsh engine braking effect. After that, you can get back on the throttle if you need to. Basic stuff, but there are some common mistakes new riders often tend to make. Let's look at them. The first mistake, which instantly reveals a brand new rider, is looking down at the controls during shifting. At the clutch, at the throttle, sometimes even at the shifter lever. This has to stop as quickly as possible. We need to be able to operate every control on our bike by feel, while keeping our eyes on the road ahead. When you just start learning how to ride a motorcycle, you have to be conscious about this sort of thing. Keep looking forward and force yourself not to look down at controls. Luckily, with a bit of practice, this habit usually goes away fast. The second mistake is simply taking too long to shift. When I explain it step by step, roll off the throttle, pull in the clutch, shift, release the clutch, got back on the throttle, it might sound like a lot, but in reality all of these actions happen in very quick succession. The whole process should take less than a second. If you are spending too much time between gears and noticeably losing speed while shifting, it means your shifting is too slow. You can easily speed things up with some extra practice, and you can do it even on a stationary bike. Just repeat all these steps quicker and quicker until they become muscle memory. The third very common beginner mistake happens during downshifts. It is when a rider releases the clutch too quickly. This makes the bike jerk because right after you downshift, the gearbox is forcing the engine to spin faster for the same rear wheel speed, which momentarily increases engine braking. Because of this, if you just dump the clutch during a downshift, you'll get a sudden engine braking jolt. The fix is simple. During a downshift, release the clutch in a smooth and controlled motion. And the fourth mistake, which is especially common with people who learn to drive cars before learning how to ride, is upshifting too early. Most motorcycle engines are designed to operate higher in the RPM range, and they are not optimized for low-end performance. If you shift too soon, you'll drop into too low an RPM, which bogs down the engine and kills your acceleration. Even if you are used to your car engine purring at low RPM and revving it just feels wrong, ignore this sensation. Don't be afraid to let the engine rev a bit higher than you would in your car. It is intentionally designed to operate in higher range, and it will perform better there. Just don't redline it constantly and you'll be good. So, this basic shifting method is a great starting point. It is easy to learn and there is really nothing wrong with it. Basically, most riders just stick with it. But if you want to be able to shift faster and smoother, you can learn a couple more advanced tricks. The second method we'll see today is clutchless shifting. Why should we learn it? Most importantly, because it makes you feel like a racer, shaving off those precious fraction of a second in each gear shift. And also because it is an important stepping stone to the third hybrid method I'll show you later. Let's start with clutchless upshifting, because it is the easier to perform. When you are accelerating and need to upshift, instead of doing all the routine we discussed earlier, you can just very briefly cut the power and shift up at the same time, without even touching the clutch. The momentary power cut unloads the transmission just enough for the next gear to slide in. That's pretty much it. Here how it looks. We are accelerating quickly with an open throttle, then momentarily cut the throttle and open it again, while simultaneously upshifting. Or alternatively, you can just preload the shifter in advance. And as soon as you flick your wrist, the shifter will slide into the next gear. Extremely simple. The only important caveat here is how quickly you do it. You cut the throttle and get back on it fast. And it only works well when you're accelerating quickly, not necessarily at full throttle, but quickly nonetheless. If you accelerate gradually, you won't have such a big difference when you cut the throttle, so the gear won't engage as smoothly as it should. And by the way, what we are doing during clutchless shifting is basically the same principle used on bikes equipped with quick shifters. When you shift, a quick shifter just automatically does the throttle cut for you, by briefly cutting the ignition. Obviously, electronic systems cut the power much faster than we can do manually, so the clutchless shifting also becomes better. But even then, the shift will still feel a bit clunky if you are accelerating too gently. That's why sometimes you can hear riders complain about how bad their quick shifters are on their bikes, when in reality they are just using them a bit wrong. Quick shifters are meant to be used during fast acceleration. For more calm riding, it is still better to use the clutch. Now let's move on to clutchless downshifting. It is a bit trickier to do. Instead of cutting the throttle, we have to do the opposite. We quickly open the throttle and close it while shifting down. The challenge is, just like with upshifting, we have to momentarily create enough difference so the shifting goes smoothly. So prior to this throttle blip, we have to slow down rather quickly. Which means at the time we are doing this throttle blip, we are braking. So the challenge is now, we have to blip the throttle while still holding steady brake pressure. It is not that hard to achieve, but it certainly takes some additional practice to get the timing right. Hence why it is more difficult than upshifting. One more downside of the clutchless shifting is that it is not gentle on the gearbox as using the clutch. During clutchless shifting, the engine, with all its rotational momentum, is still fully connected to the input shaft of the gearbox, so at the moment the gears engage, they take a bigger hit. And though many riders use clutchless shifting regularly with no problems, that does mean more wear over time. It is not like your gearbox will explode the moment you start practicing, but this extra stress is definitely something worth considering. Now we can see that clutchless shifting is great for really fast shifting during quick accelerations, but it is not always the smoothest, and it does put extra pressure on the gearbox. Now let's combine clutchless shifting with our normal shifting method to achieve a third, hybrid method with all the strengths and none of the weaknesses of the previous two. It makes your bike shift very fast and very smooth at the same time, without putting extra strain on your gearbox. Here's how it works. When you're accelerating and ready to upshift, you do the same quick throttle cut exactly like during clutchless shifting, but at the same time you quickly squeeze the clutch and release it as soon as you slip into the next gear. All three actions here, throttle, clutch and shifter, happen almost simultaneously. The clutch, in this case, unlike in the basic approach, is only disengaged for a fraction of a second, just enough to smooth out the shift and take the load of the gearbox. The same principle works for downshifts too. We blip the throttle just like during clutchless downshifting, while simultaneously disengaging the clutch for a moment and shifting down, all in one fast, fluid motion. So now we have very quick and smooth up and down shifting, but without the problems of clutchless shifting. We don't have to accelerate or decelerate quickly, we can use this hybrid shifting method at any rate, and it will always remain very quick and smooth. With some practice you will literally be able to shift gears without feeling it. That's how smooth and quick the shifting process becomes. Very well worth the extra time spent on practicing it, if you ask me. Okay, great! Now that you've seen a quick and efficient way to shift gears, you'll most certainly find this next technique very useful. It is called rev matching, and it is the key to making your downshift buttery smooth, without any jerks or rear wheel hop. This video here explains in great detail and shows you exactly how to do it. Click and I'll walk you through it step by step. And next week we'll dive into engine braking, a subject that's closely related to shifting and just as important for your bike control. Remember to subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Ride safely and thank you for watching. Bye!